Good afternoon, everybody. This is Marty from Dog's Blog with the noontime report of the morning session of the Frank Carson et al. Trial on December 12, 2018. Court was, I thought, supposed to start at 9 o'clock, but apparently not supposed to start until 9:30. Maybe the judge was late. I don't know. And she didn't get here until right at 9:30. Jury was up at 9:52. Judge on the bench at 9:56. Eddie Quintanar back on the stand. Marlisa Ferrer still doing redirect on this, discussing the display of our resources in Stanislaus County District Attorney's Office. I guess when Bridget Fladiger says that she wants to prosecute innocent people for experience, this is what they're talking about on this redirect. Marlisa Ferrer is redirecting Eddie Quintanar, who has filed a lawsuit against her personally, along with Stanislaus County and Kurt Punch personally. And I guess this is her way of making him pay for it. Anyway, just my opinion, whatever that's worth. She asked him about the 7/15/12 of wiretap again. Daljeet Alwal said he had gone to the sheriff's office. She asked him if he knew he was talking to a police officer. Of course he did. She asked him, to his knowledge, did any private investigators take someone to be interviewed at a law enforcement facility? He said, of course not. They went into nothing illegal about carrying a gun in your house or your business. But in the car, you need a permit to carry a gun. Well, again, there's legal ways of doing it, but she's trying to direct the conversation to get specific answers. Marlisa Ferrer is trying to say it's illegal to carry a firearm on somebody else's property. Well, that's not true either if you have permission from those people to carry a gun. Unknown if legal to go to a Turlock residence with a firearm. Again, the same answer if you have their permission. She asked him about he was forced to answer questions at the CHP interview in 2012. And she said failing to answer the questions is insubordination. He said, yes, that's true. And she asked him what he was fired for. And he said, insubordination. She asked him in the 3/24/2015 interview with Kurt Bunch if he was he didn't have to answer questions and he was free to leave. And he said, I did not feel I was free to leave. 9/2/15 interview with Sergeant Rush of the CHP. Also, that was a forced, what he called a forced interview, and there was objections, and Judge Iniga didn't understand the relevance of that questioning, and it really wasn't brought across, and I don't know why she's going into that. She's starting all over again, just kind of doing as she pleases. Alonzo Gradford at this time took Eddie Quintanar off the stand and took him into the private room to talk to him a little bit. So when he came back, she said on cross he made statements to Kurt Bunch. They talked about statements he made to Kurt Bunch on 3/24/15, talking about Scott McFarland living next door to a bunch of thieves. Daljeet Atwal said they're theft-type people, but he said he made a mistake, and it was actually Scott McFarland that had said that. This led to a long sidebar. Again, a very long sidebar and very, you could tell, animated sidebar also. Again, she asked him if he was free to leave on the Kurt Bunch interview, and she asked him if Kurt Bunch said he can give a voluntary statement and he is free to leave to go at any time. He didn't have to say anything. And Quintanar said, yes, that's what he said, but that's not how I felt. In fact, Marlisa Ferrer had actually read that in the transcript and then didn't follow up with a question to Quintanar. So basically she was testifying to the jury and not trying to inquire to get information. Led to another sidebar, a long sidebar. Marlisa Ferreira, the whole thing was stricken by the judge, her reading the transcript, and she read it again and then asked him if he was free to leave, and he said again, I didn't feel like I was free to leave. She asked him about testifying in the cross and not talk to. He was told not to talk to Kurt Bunch by some CHP people. In addition to that, he talked to his representative Mark Frost, that was his union rep, and he had information from Frost and some command. And he had called and they had told him not to talk. And he also said that he had talked to a Lieutenant Frost, who's not the same Mark Frost, who's his union rep. And he just was looking for some clarification, and he got some. He just read the policies of department policies to him, and didn't really tell him either way. Quintanar said he was just looking for clarification from the lieutenant, and he had told the union rep that the lieutenant just doesn't want to know. He appears to be hiding from it. He's told Mark Frost, the union rep, that Lieutenant Frost was talking like he was a fucking idiot to talking to Quintanar like Quintanar was a fucking idiot. The lieutenant didn't seem to understand what was going on. And then he talked about, was asked about Marlisa Ferreira, the 3/24/15 interview again. That was a Kurt Bunch interview. While all the other, some of the other officers were talking about trying to catch someone that was stealing on the property. And he said he was referring to the rep, Walter Wells, and Scott McFarland. She also referenced again the people living next door to Scott McFarland and the ones that were trying to be caught. He said, no, that's not who they were talking about. They had no idea. He had heard the theories from Walter Wells, Scott McFarland, and Mark Frost, as Kurt Bunch had interviewed all of them prior. And so he heard the theories from them of what the district attorney's office was trying to find out, as they're very good at telling everybody what they know instead of finding out information. Quintanar had no idea that the conversation, he believed that the conversation was prior to Corey Kaufman going missing, but he wasn't 100% sure. And again, he said the conversation was heard with Walter Wells and Scott McFarland and possibly Daljit Outlaw. Marlisa Ferreira asked him again who was present in that conversation. He said it was himself, Quintanar, Scott McFarland, Daljit, Walter Wells, maybe Walter Wells, he wasn't sure. Marlisa Ferreira asked him about Jai Golhill's question in regards to tweakers and thieves and how they felt about it. Scott McFarland said he wanted the thieves from next door to move out, as they were a problem in the neighborhood. Told Kurt Bunch that Scott McFarland was sneaky, and he was confronted with a wiretap, and he said that in the wiretap that Daljit Outlaw said Scott McFarland might be an informant. Dombey asked Quintanar if Scott McFarland was being sneaky. It came up in that interview also. The jury was out at 10:54. A couple of issues to be resolved, and then we're taking a break. judge is kind of curious where she's going with some of this stuff. In fact, told her to. Marlisa is saying that some of this information is in the transcript, so she told her to find it during the break and direct everybody to where it says some of the things that she's talking about Scott McFarlane being sneaky and stuff like that. Judge Iniga did read some of the transcript, but it had need to be clarified during the break. She said the objections, some of the objections were sustained because it misstates the evidence. And her attorney Hans also argued that Marlisa had posed a question what Q had told Kurt Bunch and then Dombey about Scott McFarlane being sneaky, and now trying to appear that Quintanar had lied to Dombey. But Quintanar had actually tried to clarify who had actually made the statements. The district attorney is trying to relay her own opinion, not his opinion, by these directed questions. And also it appears that she's convoluting maybe two interviews together and conjoining them in her questions. Judge Iniga said they say that Scott McFarlane was sneaky in two different ways. Marlisa Ferreira argued that some of this didn't totally make sense to me at all. I'm just writing down what they said. Scott McFarlane, Marlisa Ferreira said Scott McFarlane had actually initially made the Cooley-Kaufman connection. Quintanar kept saying Scott McFarlane might have known more, and Quintanar finally said McFarlane had more information. Judge Iniga then addressed Marlisa Ferreira and said this is getting suspiciously starting to sound like the Jim Cook testimony. It's repetitive. He's been on the stand 6 days now. She said it's time to move on. She also noted that she's blaming the defense's cross-examination for the long recross by Marlisa Ferreira. The district attorney's office hit the lotto with this judge, I'm telling you. But Judge Iniga tells Marlisa Ferreira, let's move on from this witness. It's starting to sound too much like the Jim Cook testimony. And you watch a jury, she's lost a jury. So it's up to her. So we did take a break. We came back, and the jury was back up around 11:36. So we had another 20 minutes or so of testimony. Marlisa also said that Marlisa Ferreira also said that she had only had two more pages of questions left, so she was almost done. Well, this doesn't work for almost done for her. In regards to, she asked Quintanar in regards to McFarlane and the Kurt Bunch interview, and he had talked to Scott McFarlane, Dalji Datwell, and Walter Wells. The same question has been asked 4 times today. And when she asked him if that occurred at the store, and he believed it was a store, but he wasn't 100% sure. The union rep, Mark Frost, was not a supervisor, a person that just he's a union representative and understands the union stuff. But he was giving him advice. She asked Quintanar if the person who took a swing at Dalji Atwell, if it was Corey Kaufman or not, and Quintanar says, I don't know. I do not know Corey Kaufman. During video, the DA, this is the video they're watching at the Poppin' Cork where Dalji Atwell and Robert Woody get in an altercation with a subject at the store. Q was present. Robert Woody and Dalji Atwell were watching the video. It sounds like it was watched afterwards. Dalji Atwell also said that he was concerned about being robbed back into the chart in regards to the trackers. Yes, this is jumping around a lot, and they do this to see if they can get the answers they want, or if they say the same answers or give some answers that they want. He was asked, Marlisa Ferrer asked him in 13 years that he was in law enforcement, have you ever seen anybody use a tracker to commit a robbery? There was objections and major objections over this. And then she moved on. She said, she asked him if he has never seen or talked to Thomas O'Keefe after July 15th of 2012. He did not recall. Did he have a conversation with Officer O'Keefe about the homicide? There was objections. And I also made a note in the side of my page here. It says the defense are objecting to a lot of these things because they're pretty outrageous, and sometimes. And Judge Aniga is continually overruling the objections, but then looks at Marlisa Ferrer and says, you need to ask that a different way, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. So she's telling her she's not asking the question properly, but overruling the defense's objections. She tells them to ask different or whatever. She asked him if he had a right to refuse a CHP investigator's interview. And he says, no, I didn't. But he said, you did walk out and he said, yes, on advice of attorney. Yes, I walked out. So she objected to his response, and she said, did you walk out? She wants to hear that yes, no. She doesn't want to hear the answer. Parents are like that sometimes too. I had a dad like that. She asked him about following the code of ethics and treating people fairly. She says, does describing investigators motherfuckers and fucking type guys and calling them stupid. She said that is that along the code of ethics and being not kind to the investigators. She also asked him would he have used the same terms if he had known he was being wiretapped, and there's no way to know that. And he says no, he wouldn't have changed anything he said, but there's no way to know that. She asked him if he was upset about Kurt Bunch had talking to his wife, gone to his house while he was at work, and tell wife it was a homicide investigation or the pop and cork issue. He says he did not recall. She also then asked him if he had spoken to anyone from the defense since his testimony had started. And he says, no, I'm just, nobody has spoke to me. She said, is he still trying to help Daljeet Atwal? And he says, I'm here to tell the truth. Now, for some reason, Marlisa Ferrer wants to play another audio. This is like 5 minutes to 12. This is where Kurt Bunch had knocked on the door of Quintanar's house when Quintanar wasn't home to talk to his wife. And Kurt Bunch had, when she finally answered the door, it took several knocks for her to do it. He told Quintanar's wife that he was a liar and upset, and he was lying to her about what was going on. Oh, she had asked him. I got this mixed up. I'm sorry. This is the end of the morning session. He said that Kurt Bunch said he was a liar and upset about going to her house. He had cooperated. Had he cooperated with Kurt Bunch, would that have happened? Objecting. It's all speculation. Nobody knows. Audio evidence number 733 was moved in. That's the audio of Kurt Bunch and Heather Quintanar conversation at Quintanar's house. Kurt Bunch and John Evers were both there. Kurt Bunch knocked on the door again. Like I said, it took several knocks. Kurt Bunch said her husband was going to be arrested and people are lying to her about what's going on. And that was the end of the audio. They didn't play the entire audio. And so what Quintanar said sounds pretty familiar what Kurt Bunch did say. And Marlisa Ferrer asked Quintanar He did not say that her husband was lying to her. Well, basically, yeah, that's what he said. He didn't use that word. No, they're getting into semantics. They're playing that game. This is what this district attorney's office does because they have no integrity. And I'm kind of pissed off about what I've seen the last 6 days with this witness. Ask your questions, do your job. Don't enjoy it so much. That was the end of the morning session. We were back at 1:30. More Quintanar in the stand with the DA still doing redirect. And don't forget the podcast tonight at 6 o'clock.